in the malaise, which is that every time Theresa May talks about it, Abu Hamza and 4 others were extradited. Why don't they say that Talha, Ahsan and 4 others were extradited? Because that's the real story. Hamja, over to you.
Hello everyone. So it's been nearly over last Saturday since Dala spent his first ever night in an American prison. This was the first time Dala had ever been to the United States. It's been so long and we haven't even had the chance of a family phone call. We don't know anything. We haven't heard his voice. Dala used to call his mother every day. He used to call me every day. We've had nothing. I haven't heard his voice. I don't know anything. I have no clue how he is. I have no clue how he's being kept. It's that agony, that and uncertainty, and whatever bureaucratic reasons you're giving, there is sort of morality and human decency, and yeah, rather scandalously, I'm someone who went to every city in England, Scotland and Wales, telling British Muslims to actually support Gary McKinnon, and Gary McKinnon's mother is my friend, and I was very proud to stand by her. I'm very happy for her, and I'm very happy for her because she doesn't have to go through the same nightmare my family are going through now, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone's family. I've had more interviews in the last 2 days than any other period of Dala's 6 years detention without trial, and they're all suddenly interested in Dala because they want to compare him to Gary McKinnon. Dala does not have to be compared to Gary McKinnon to see that this is a stark and horrible injustice. Dala doesn't have to be part of a group called, in a very misleading and cheap soundbite, Abu Hamza and the others. Dala is a co-defendant of Baba Ahmed on almost exact same charges. And I think an internal police report said Baba Ahmed had the same status as Stephen Lawrence within the Muslim community, but Dala doesn't need. What's been done to Dala is absolutely, scandalous and disgusting, and that's on its own merits. And we haven't had the same celebrity supporters. The National Autistic Society. Well, ironically, the National Autistic Society said the reason they couldn't support us was because of government cut all their resources. I've been doing this full time for the last 6 months. I gave up my academic ambitions and my art career and my job and everything. And just yesterday was as I said, about 8 interviews. The BBC are suddenly all interested. It's really funny because I was on Radio 5 yesterday, and David Davis came onto the air to argue this wasn't racist treatment. And the funny thing is, he confessed right at the start he didn't actually know anything about the case. So he'd come with a preformed opinion and then said, "Oh, don't jump to conclusions." And then there was a QC called Julian Knowles who completely made up a complete lie and said, "This is not about Asperger, it's about suicide risks," and none of the other detainees had suicide risk in their statement, which is a complete lie. And maybe he knew it, maybe he didn't, but people coming on TV shows or radio shows with preformed opinions. And yeah, Dala has I haven't talked about this because there's stigma and taboos, especially amongst middle class Asian families, and mental health isn't something that even within British Muslim communities carries weight and stigma, and even Dala was reluctant to talk about it. But yeah, Dala has assessed suicide risk confirmed by someone called Dr. Quentin Dealey, which was his doctor in Latin in 2009, and then again in a European court judgment, which an American criminologist says. And let's bear in mind, solitary confinement, and whatever euphemism you can call it, that this is where 50% of prison suicides take place in the United States. and it's illegal and non-existent in the UK, and we've known this ever since the days of Charles Dickens in 1860, and 150 years or 60 years later, what progress is there? I'd like to also say how, even if I guilty of this, but the left in this country, it's as if solitary confinement was invented when Bradley Manning was detained. And if you just look at the reporting of the European Court judgment, and the European Court basically gave a green light to the most extreme forms of abuse in American prisons, saying that's fine. Rights organisations from Centre for Constitutional Rights, Solitary Watch, Human Rights First, they all signed a statement saying this judgment was wrong. 150 academics from, celeb academics from Judith Butler to 120 legal academics, they all signed a statement saying this was wrong. Not a single newspaper or media source reported that, in this balanced BBC coverage as it calls itself. Even the, and I mean, even in the United States, I went to Amnesty International just to see Robert King, and I went there just to ask him, tips, how do you survive solitary confinement? And the Amnesty International people who've been campaigning against solitary confinement for Americans, and I pointed out to them, well, there's British citizens here, and you're showing pride, lots of people support the Angola Free, which is wonderful, but why have you shown no concern towards British citizens who are about to be sent to solitary confinement? I mean, Kate Allen, the director of Amnesty International, is very busy praising Majid Nawaz. I thought Amnesty International was supposed to protect human rights, not write book reviews. Majid Nawaz and Talha actually graduate together at SOAS. One makes a lot of money through writing bad academic research and spying on his ex-friends, and Talha's been detained for nearly a fifth of his life without trial, without charge, amongst the longest periods in British history. And Amnesty International just recently, last week I think, issued a statement saying, we have extreme concern about the way Talha has been treated and the 4 other detainees, and a little bit too late, and there's ample evidence that solitary confinement causes madness, psychosis, depression, suicide. Even within the United States, there's 2 lawsuits against Supermax prisons. One about someone who came into Supermax prison perfectly healthy and then developed psychosis and started self-mutilating himself with chicken bones. And another case of someone who just hung himself. And even while he hung himself in prison, he was actually shackled. There's all sorts of horror stories. If you're unfortunate enough to be one of my Facebook friends, you'll see one horrible story about solitary confinement after the other. During the last few weeks or months, we thought this would be inevitable, so I read every single account from Robert King's account, which you can buy there, to Angela Davis, to lesser known prisoners like Ray Luke, Lavassiere, who spent 20 years in ADX Florence. Just thinking how I could advise Bella, how I can console him to survive these horrible torture cells. We're talking 23 hours a day without any human contact in a 7-foot cell. I remember when I was in Long Lartin and Bella first told me about these conditions, I didn't, and there were things that would reoccur in my nightmares, and now Bella is in that nightmare right now.